Hey, Sam from 3D here. In today's video you'll learn how to quickly put together a scene like this one on Blender. If you've been watching this series, you already know how to model, UV and texture objects. However, you don't need to always do those things yourself. There are plenty of websites and add-ons that will give you access to huge libraries. I'll show some of the best ones and we'll make this scene in a matter of minutes. And the great part is most of those have high quality, free assets for you to use. Starting with our character, we'll use this girl from our website. 3D.design is where you can find high-quality, stylized assets for your next big render. All of our libraries have samples that you can use for free. Next up it's textures. We'll use an add-on called BlenderKit. Great people share their materials and models. All materials are free, some models are paid, but there are plenty of free ones, as we'll see later on. These couches, coffee table, light and plant were downloaded off of Sketchfab, which is another huge website with thousands of models, many of which are free. There is an add-on that allows us to import these models directly inside Blender, and I'll show you how to do that on this video. But before that, let's model our room. Since we are making one of those orthographic renders, we need a certain size. So here on Blender, I'm going to select everything and delete. Shift A, mesh plane, click here, and let's add a 3-meter size plane. Now tap into edit mode, select these two edges. Press E to extrude, Z to constrain it at the Z axis. Let's make it 2.2 meters tall. This is the base of our room. Go back to object mode, click on the modifier tab, add modifier, and let's add a solidify modifier. As you can see, this will add some thickness to this model, mark even thickness. So everything looks the same and put the value of 0.1. That way we have a nice thick wall. If you think it's a bit difficult to see what you're doing, click on the little arrow, then check cavity and check shadow. This will make it a little easier on the viewport. Let's add the camera, press Shift A, camera, change perspective to orthographic, press N to open up the side panel, and we need to change these rotations. The X needs to be 55 degrees, Z needs to be 45, and Y needs to be 0 or close to 0. Now press G to grab, and Z twice to move it along its Z axis. Now we can look through it, and you can notice that it doesn't matter if we move the camera in or out, the cube stays in the same size. That's because an orthographic camera view removes any types of perspective. It's almost like you're seeing a sketch. And since the apparent size of this cube would change depending on perspective, it doesn't change at all. Now we're going to move this camera on the Z-axis until we have this edge aligned with the camera. And the top edge as well. That's the highest I can get. And if I try to move this camera away, you can see that it doesn't change on the camera, exactly because it is orthographic and not perspective. To fix this, we need to change the orthographic scale. Let's try something like 8. That is much better. Okay, so that's our basic scene and camera setup. But it's looking a little bland, so let's add some flavor to it by adding some textures. To do this, we're going to use BlenderKit. It used to come with Blender, but nowadays you need to download it off of their website. So on Google, type BlenderKit, click on Download BlenderKit and click here to download. This will give you a zip file. Save this anywhere on your computer, back on Blender. Click on Edit, Preferences. Over here in the Add-ons tab, you're going to click on Install. And you're going to look for the file that you just downloaded. You don't need to extract it. Select the file and click on Install Add-on. And now all you need to do is mark this little box, hit OK, and you'll see that it already showed up right there. And you can access this add-on either by typing and looking for stuff up here. These are models, materials, scenes, words, and brushes. Or you can interact with the add-on pressing the N key. And coming over here to BlenderKit, I like to use it here on the top. To hide this, just click on this little eye icon. So let's look for a flooring material for our room. I want a wooden floor, so I'm going to click on the materials and look for wooden floor. You can move here by clicking on these arrows or using your scroll wheel. And remember that all materials are free. I like this one, so I'm going to click and drag it to our model and that's it. It's already there. If I now go to Material Preview, you'll see the texture applied, but it's kind of not applied correctly. For that, we need to do UV unwrapping. Since this is a very basic model, just going to Edit Mode. Select everything and either press Smart UV Project or Cube Projection. Both will work just fine. I'm going to use Cube Projection. Let's go back to Object Mode. The floor looks nice, but I don't want wooden walls. So let's look for a plaster material. I like this coarse plaster one. Just click and drag to it. You notice that the material that you just dragged in overrode the other one. We can fix that by coming over to the material properties. Click on the plus icon and look again for our wood material. Now in edit mode, select only the floor face, wooden floor and click Assign. If you have a good eye, you'll probably notice that this scale for our floor texture has changed a little bit. If you come over to Object Properties and UV Maps, you'll see this Auto UV. This UV is done by the plugin. If you want to keep the original UV you just click on the minus icon or select this one to be the rendered one. I'm going to remove this one and I'm just going to unwrap it again. The scale on this cursed plaster is a little too big, so I'm going to the shading workspace. And here in mapping, I'm going to make it a little bigger. Actually, on this case, it's smaller. That looks much better. Sam from the future here, I forgot to show you how to fix this texture stretching. Click on the model, click on the material properties, and let's add a new material. I'm not going to change anything about it. Head over to the modifier tab and change this rim option under material. That will fix the stretching because we just added a different material for the trim. If you want to download models, the process is exactly the same. You click here to find models instead of materials. Click on this icon to select free first, and let's look for a couch. And we have plenty of couches, but you can just literally click and drag to the scene. Let's click and drag this leather sofa. This couch is really nice, but it's quite realistic and I want a more cartoony looking couch. For that, I'm going to download a model off of Sketchfab. I chose this model by looking for stylized couch, and I ended up finding a whole kit by this awesome guy, Benji Labs. To download these models, we have two options. We can scroll down and click on Download 3D Model or use the Sketchfab add-on. For both, we're going to need to make an account. I'll go the add-on route because it's way more integrated on Blender and it makes it easier for me to download models. On Google, look for a Sketchfab add-on. Click on the first link. It's the GitHub link. Then click on Releases. Scroll down and download the .zip file here. We're going to do the same thing. Click on Edit Preferences, click on Add-ons, install and look for the Sketchfab plugin. Mark it in order to see it. You're going to press Add and it's going to show up right here under BlenderKit. Sketchfab. To use it, we need to click on Activate Add-on and it's going to ask for your email and password. You can also log in using the API token, which you can find under your profile on Sketchfab. Here we have a couple of filters. And we have this import from URL thing. If you look for couch here, you'll notice that the thumbnails are quite small. So instead you can explore the website looking for the model you want. And here you have a nice 3D preview. And all you have to do is copy this URL, tick this little box, paste the URL, and click on Import Model. The numbers on my mouse indicates the downloading process. And now we have our models in. I'm going to turn off the leather sofa. A common thing between models coming from Sketchfab is that they come linked to empty. If you don't want that, you can press Alt-P and click on Clear and Keep Transformation. We have a bunch of empties that we can just go ahead and delete. This is optional though, you don't need to do this. Now, it's just a matter of moving these around until it looks good. I want to move this plant as a whole, but it only comes with the pot or the leaves. So I'm going to select the leaves, then the pot and press Ctrl-P and set parent to object. Now the leaves are parented to the pot. I want to add a painting to that wall. To do that, open Preferences, Add-ons and look for Import Images as Planes. Mark the box, close this and I'll press Shift. 8, go to Image and Image as Planes, and I'm going to select the image I want. This will give you a plane already. UV unwrap to the exact size of the picture you just sent. This works with every image. I think that's a pretty good painting, don't you think? Now all that is left to do is import the character. I'm not gonna talk about posing in this video, we're going to get that in another video. If you look through the camera and press C and go to render view, you see that everything looks very dark, and that's because we have no lights. If you saw our lighting video, you already know how to set up an HDR, and that's what I'm going to do right now. That's great, but it's still looking a little dark. Before we keep adding lights, let's add a floor. Shift A, mesh plane, and just scale it. I'm going to snap this plane to the bottom of the cube. So click here to enable snapping and change this to vertex. Now press G and move it down. It should snap to that vertex. Let's add a generic material to it, some pastel-like color. And now let's add an aerial lamp. Since we have snapping on, I want to snap this light to here. Make it bigger and let's increase its power. That's too much. I like how this looks. I'm going to change it from Eevee to cycles. And now I just have to render this out. Before you actually render it, here in solid view, if you think that everything looks way too samey, you can click on this arrow again and change material to random. You can play around with these to have different looks, even matte caps. This doesn't change anything on your render, it's just made so you can easily see what's going on in your scene. Especially with very complex scenes, it becomes very boring to look at gray all the time. At least for me, that depends on you. Now, all I have to do is render, and that's it. You now have the power of all these libraries to make awesome scenes with. If you want to be around like-minded people, go to our Discord at the description below. If you have video ideas, questions or suggestions, leave a comment down below. Give us a like and subscribe to help the algorithm, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.